We were in the midst of a description of the psychic world where those who have departed from this earth world rest between one death and the next birth. The poet continues, "Here was the fashioning chamber of the worlds. As we noted, the psychic world is not one of the worlds in the gradation of the cosmic stair, but it stands behind, supporting the various worlds. It is from an impulse from the psychic that the various worlds come to be formed. Here was the fashioning chamber of the worlds. An interval was left twixt act and act, twixt birth and birth, twixt dream and waking dream, a pause that gave new strength to do and be. That is, this forced interval of rest after leaving the body and before taking up another body gives a new strength to do what the soul wants and to be what the soul intends. These pauses are necessary before the effort is resumed time after time. Now, beyond this world, beyond this psychic world, were regions of delight and peace, mute birthplaces of light and hope and love, and cradles of heavenly rapture and repose. In these worlds, both rapture and repose are simultaneous. In our world, where there is rapture, there can't be repose. And where there is repose, there can be peace, but not rapture. But in these regions, both exist simultaneously. In a slumber of the voices of the world, he of the eternal moment grew aware. Ashwapati, in the midst of these experiences, suddenly grows aware of the throb of eternity. All around there are these voices of the beings that are inhabiting this world. But he passes beyond them. His knowledge, stripped bare of the garbs of sense, knew by identity, without thought or word. His knowledge is not a kind of knowledge that is acquired through the functioning of the faculties of sense, nor is it arrived at through thinking or verbal formulation. It is a knowledge by identity of consciousness. It is the highest and the deepest knowledge. It is a knowledge whereby my consciousness embraces the consciousness in the object, and in that identity there is a spontaneous revelation of the constitution, the truth of that object of knowledge. Sri Aurobindo describes in his Life Divine how this knowledge by identity is the only that is free from error, that is instantaneous. His being saw itself without its veils. We are never aware of our being as it is. We always see it as it is coated, as it is sheathed. Life's line fell from the Spirit's infinity. He becomes aware of the infinite existence of the Spirit, and the touch of the life force, the formation of life, falls behind. Along a road of pure interior light, not light that comes from outside and lights up, but an interior light, alone between tremendous presences. He is walking, he is alone, but he is aware that all around there are great, mighty presences. And if around him are the tremendous presences, under the watching eye of nameless gods, these are not the gods that we worship here under one name or other, but nameless gods. Their names are secret, and they will remain secret till we discover those names by tapasya, spiritual ascesis. Under the watching eye of the nameless gods, his soul passed on, a single conscious power, towards the end, which ever begins again. In Mother's and Sri Aurobindo's conception, there is no absolute end. There is nothing like saying finish. Towards the end, which ever begins again. Ashwapati is approaching a goal which is the beginning of another goal, another passage. Approaching through a stillness dumb and calm to the source of all things, human and divine. So the soul of Ashwapati is fully conscious, alone, and it is approaching through an absolute stillness, mute and calm, approaching that source of things, things human and things divine. And there, as he arrives, at the precincts of that source, there he beheld in their mighty unions poise the figure of the deathless two in one, a single being in two bodies clasped, a diarchy of two united souls, seated absorbed in deep creative joy. He has crossed through the world of souls. He has crossed through the regions of knowledge by identity. He has passed through tremendous presences around, passed under the watching eye of the nameless gods, and now he arrives at a station where he beholds, he sees the two in one, Shiva and Shakti in one, Ardhanarishwara, both the male and the female, the passive and the active in one, a single being in two bodies clasped, a diarchy, double rule of two united souls, seated, absorbed in deep creative joy. Their joy is creative. Their trance of bliss sustain the mobile world. They are absolutely tranced in their deep creative joy. But that poise itself sustains this whole world in motion, world in revolution. So Shiva and Shakti together in their mutuality create and uphold the revolutions of this world. But that's not the end. Across the plurality of gods, he has arrived at the two in one. Now beyond the two in one, he says, behind them, in a morning dusk, a pleasant, misty twilight. Behind them in a morning dusk, one stood who brought them forth from the unknowable. The one has brought out these two in one from the being of what is unknowable to the human mind. And that one, he says, ever disguised, she awaits the seeking spirit. That one is she. It is she who has disguised herself and waits. She awaits the seeking spirit, the questing soul, watcher on the supreme unreachable peaks. She stands on those supreme peaks which are not accessible to the human spirit, and she watches. Who is ready? Who is coming? What is happening? Watcher on the supreme unreachable peaks, guide the traveler of the unseen paths, In her very act of watching, she guides. A single glance from her, it helps the traveler. Who is walking the paths that are unseen. She guards the austere approach to the alone. There is a slender approach, full of difficulty, austere approach to the alone. She guards, she stands on the peaks, she watches, she helps, but at the same time, she guards so that the unripe spirit cannot get through. He who forces his way through, you may say, an ascetic intensity, without fulfilling the purpose, he cannot get through. She guards the austere approach to the alone. At the beginning of each far spread plain level, pervading with her power the cosmic suns, she reigns. Each cosmos, each plane of existence has its own sun, and she pervades with her power. That is, she illumines, she sustains each plane. Inspirer of its multiple works and thinker of the symbol of its scene. Each scene is not true in itself, it is a symbol of something behind. And she knows it. Above them, all the multiple worlds, the cosmic suns, above them all, she stands supporting all. The sole omnipotent goddess ever veiled. You cannot have a sight of her face in an unpurified condition. That is why she is ever veiled. There is a veil. This sole omnipotent goddess ever veiled, of whom the world is the inscrutable mask. So here is another important point in Sri Aurobindo's philosophy. That is, the world is a mask, inscrutable, impenetrable. But it is a fact, it is a mask, there is a reality behind the world. The world is only a veil. That is, the meaning of this world is not what we think it is. The reality is something else. And of her, the ages are the footfalls of her tread as she walks. Each footstep, each step that she takes creates an age. The ages are the footfalls of her tread, their happenings the figure of her thoughts. If she can be said to have thoughts, all activities, all movements are external figures of the thoughts that course through her consciousness, and all creation is her endless act of this omnipotent goddess. There is no end. All creation, there is not one creation, is her endless act. And he beholds her. His spirit was made a vessel of her force. As he watches, as he looks at her, her force fills his spirit, his awareness, his consciousness, and he becomes a vessel holding her force, mute in the fathomless passion of his will. His whole will gathers into its intensity. All its passion focuses, and it is fathomless passion. And it is unable to articulate itself. He can't put it his will, his aspiration, his forward movement in thought or in talk or in speech. That is why the poet says, mute in the fathomless passion of his will, he outstretched to her his folded hands of prayer. He can only fold his hands of prayer and outstretch them. That's all that he can do. And in answer, in response to his outstretched hands of prayer, then in a sovereign answer to his heart, not to his mind, to his heart, a gesture came as of worlds thrown away. She makes a gesture as mighty, as significant, as if the worlds are thrown away. And from her raiments lustrous mystery raised, she has, as we noted, a kind of a veil on her face. Her raiments lustrous mystery, something that can't be understood, something that can't be scrutinized, analyzed. And from her raiments lustrous mystery raised, one arm half parted, the eternal veil. The whole veil is not parted. She just parts half the veil that covers her face and lets him glimpse part of her face. One arm half parted, the eternal veil. A light appeared, still and imperishable. Instantaneously, there is a light which is calm and still and eternal, attracted to the large and luminous depths of her face, which is seen half, attracted to the large and luminous depths of the ravishing enigma of her eyes. Her eyes are an enigma. Nobody can understand what they mean, but all the same, they are ravishing. They conquer. We melt before those eyes, attracted to the large and luminous depths of the ravishing enigma of her eyes. He saw the mystic outline of a face. Only then he sees some kind of outline, a mystic, beyond the analysis of the mind, of an outline of a face, not a clear vision of a face, but a mystic outline of a face. Overwhelmed by her implacable light and bliss, that was proceeding from the half-veiled face, an atom of her illimitable self. He is possessed, he is overwhelmed, and he realizes that he is only an atom of her illimitable, boundless self, mastered by the honey and lightning of her power. Her power not only is luminous, but sweet. Mastered by the honey and lightning of her power, tossed towards the shores of her ocean ecstasy. Where she stands is an ocean of ecstasy, and towards the shores, the borders, the bounds of that ocean, he is tossed helplessly. He is sucked, tossed towards the shores of her ocean ecstasy, drunk with a deep, golden, spiritual wine. What he sees, what courses in him, makes him drunk. Drunk with a deep, golden, spiritual wine. Golden, to signify it is truth, belongs to truth. He casts from the rent stillness of his soul. The stillness of his soul gives way, is torn, and from inside a cry of adoration and desire, and the surrender of his boundless mind, and the self-giving of his silent heart. In that intoxication, the silence of his soul is cut asunder, and there come out from his being a cry of adoration and desire, the surrender of his boundless mind. The mind had become really boundless, and still he surrenders that, and the self-giving of his silent heart. All the emotions, all the movements of the heart have been silenced, and that heart gives itself. And he fell down at her feet, unconscious, prone, absolutely flat. He goes unconscious, his consciousness cannot bear. He fell down at her feet, unconscious, prone. That passage, perhaps it will be good theme for our meditation. Says, behind them in a morning dusk, one stood them forth from the unknowable. Ever disguised, she awaits the seeking spirit, on the supreme unreachable peaks, guide the traveler of the unseen paths. She guards the austere approach. At the beginning of each far-spread plain, pervading with her power the cosmic suns, she reigns, inspirer of its multiple works, and thinker of the symbol of its theme. Above them all, she stands supporting all, the sole omnipotent goddess ever veiled, of whom the world is the inscrutable mask. The ages are the footfalls of her tread, their happenings the figure of her thoughts, and all creation is her endless act. His spirit was made a vessel of her force, mute in the fathomless passion of his will. He outstretched to her his folded hands of prayer. Then in a sovereign answer to his heart, a gesture came as of worlds thrown away, and from her raiment lustrous mystery raised, one arm half parted the eternal veil. A light appeared still and imperishable, attracted to the large and luminous depths of the ravishing enigma of her eyes. he saw the mystic outline of a face, overwhelmed by her implacable light and bliss, an atom of her illimitable self.